Well, hello and good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are tuning in from. My name is Carla Greengrass, and I am an admissions coach here at the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, which is iPEC for short. So thank you again for joining us for our monthly Energy Explorers live series. And we'll get going because unfortunately we only ever have about 30 minutes to engage in conversation, and we're always so excited to share. I'm especially excited to speak with Michelle today about a topic I think that as we're coming into the beginning of a new year and in the sort of the times that we're in may resonate with a lot of people, which is burnout. So before we jump into the conversation, a little bit of background for those of you who might be joining us for the first time. At iPEC, our mission is to raise the consciousness of the world one person at a time. That wonderful ripple effect that we have the opportunity to help create. And not only are we certified professional coaches, but we are a community of helpers with amazingly big hearts and incredible stories to share. And this is an incredible, wonderful, got a lot of adjectives today, platform where we get to introduce and share the stories of our community, of our coaches and our graduates, and get the opportunity to shine the light on the talents and the drive and the messages that they are putting out into the world, and the highest selves that they bring in order to live their own purpose, but also to support others in achieving that same dream. So that is really what we feel it means, really getting to the heart, the core of what it means to be a certified professional coach, and also shine the light on the unique journeys that we all get to experience. So as we talk, Michelle and I are just going to have a wonderful conversation, but we want to include you as well. So if you are inspired or you have a burning question, we ask you to drop those into the Zoom Q&A section or the Facebook comments, not into the chat box, because I don't think we get to see them that way. So first and foremost, an introduction to my esteemed guest, Michelle Kuei. She is a visibility coach, an international speaker, an author, and a clinical pharmacist who works with women coaches to create a visible coaching business. I love that, with storytelling to get seen, heard, and hired while changing lives along the way. And Michelle, all of a sudden I have this light bulb over my head around the conversation we were just having. And now it all makes sense to me about the importance of words and storytelling to convey our true selves. So thank you for pulling that all together for me. She is the founder of Elevate Life Coaching, a seminar and coaching company with a mission to empower women coaches and thought leaders with an action-oriented mindset in overcoming adversity and setbacks to think big and do more. Sit with that for a minute. That is incredibly powerful. Michelle was born in Taiwan. She grew up in New York, and today she lives in Los Angeles, California, with her short-haired orange tabby named Toby, who is about to take over publicity. Okay, that may be where we need to start, Michelle. That might be where we start, and I might give you a few moments before we drop into burnout. Tell me a little bit about the cat and the cat taking over publicity.
Yeah, so I got Toby actually beginning of the year, and I adopted him from an animal shelter during the COVID time. So what's interesting during the COVID is there's a lot of animal shelter or agency that got shut down. And so in order to go through the adoption, you actually have to go to the website and look at all these pictures of cats and dog and figure out which one really connect with you and send them a message. I want this guy. And so when I saw Toby, his name was Rusty, and I was looking at the picture. There's no way that this little guy is a Rusty. This guy is a Toby. And so I reached out to the owner, to the center, and I said, I would love to adopt this cat. And he was only 6 weeks old when I got him home, and he was just this little adorable orange ball, and just so furry and soft, and I just cannot let go of him. So I brought him home, and ever since then, he's been like a superstar in my home. And wherever he wants to go, he gets to go. I bought him so many toys; it's ridiculous. It's like having a child at home. So you'll see Toby walking, sometimes just strolling around. Like he owns this place.
I got it. So he's not really in charge of publicity. However, I did learn a fact once that when you put a picture of an animal, a dog or cat, in your social media feed, you get more attention. So maybe he does need to be a little bit more involved with publicity. So, but we can chat about that offline. We'll park that one for now. So we are engaging around a topic around burnout. And certainly over the last, we can really say 2 years now, this has been something that has been top of mind and also at the forefront of a lot of publicity stories out there in the news, because burnout, it is emotional and it's physical, and of course stress and anxiety all take its toll. And then we have this, we talked about this big story about the great resignation, people leaving their jobs in record numbers without necessarily a plan of where they're going. And we have taken to calling that the great reevaluation. And that I'm always curious about that too. So let's talk about burnout. And I know you have a personal story around burnout. So it is very personal for you.
Yeah, so Burnout and I are kind of like buddy in the past. So I've been in the clinical pharmacy world for the last 20 years, and I'm still currently in practice. And when the COVID hits, there's a lot of increasing stress and burnout just coming out from the health professional. But as a health professionals, it's been years that we have carried this stress, and they're constantly working under pressure. So when COVID hits, it was just another icing or a cherry on the top that really brought out some of the hidden facts about healthcare professionals. We're constantly working under stress. We're constantly being pushed by the insurance company, by everything that's around us. And a lot of times we don't realize it until the last minute. It's like kind of you're stretching your rubber band, and until it really snapped, and then you start to recognize that this is a problem. And that was true for me. Having that 20 years of experience in healthcare, what led me to iPEC was really that after the fact that I snapped my rubber. And it was after the fact that I noticed that I cannot live this way for the rest of my life, and I refuse to do that. So what would be my alternative to not only to address my burnout, but what can I do to get myself out of this situation? And that brought me to start looking at what are the options. But burnout is really dear to my heart.
And it makes so much sense, during the pandemic, but it was interesting to hear even before that, right? The healthcare community is under stress, and there are so many industries that are under stress. Normally it's just part of the job, but this certainly has illuminated what that looks like to the extreme. And I'm curious, what were some of the outward signals? What were some of those outward signs that made you go, okay, I need to address this?
Yeah, so I have so many stories about burnout. So one of the most incident, or the most recent incident, it happened a couple of years ago when I was working with one of my colleagues. She was a pharmacy technician. She was helping me. And that day I was just having a really bad day. I was really having a bad day. Everything's were busy. There's people calling me on the phone. There's people asking at the window, at the pharmacy window. So I'm doing as much of multitasking as I possibly could. And here she comes, she's very chill, she's laid back, and she's moved at a different pace than I am. I'm a type A personality, and she's more of a type B personality who's, things will fall into place. She has a really different perspective and different view than compared to where I was before. So she and I kind of clashed. And I remember I get a call from other colleagues, and then I was calling them because I said, I haven't seen her for a while. What happened? Where is she? She's missing. And then they told me that, she had actually having a little incident, and she had to go to the clinic because she apparently had fainted at work. And that put me into a very bad spot, because then here I am, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what have I done? Was it me? Did I say something to her? Was I the trigger for this? And my head was just going so busy, on top of all the phone ringing, people at the window, taking care of other patient who's already on the operating table. It was just everything spiraled down to that single moment where I said to myself, oh my gosh, what have I done? Am I going to get fired? Is this the end of my career? So it just continued to have those signs and symptoms of where I was emotionally agitated. Emotionally, I was at a place where I feel overwhelmed. I would come home and wake up in the middle of the night, not being able to go back to sleep. So there's that moment where I wake up in the morning and I say, oh my gosh, I have to go to work again. Oh, God help me.
And that, right. And so it's your mind takes over. It starts going back to that word. It starts telling you stories, and coming from this place of total stress and responsibility in this negative sense. And of course you wake up and go, I don't want to go back to that, because it is just, and when I'm imagining there's a compound effect there of exhaustion and fear and just kind of that desperation, that comes up for you in that moment. So for you, how long did it take before you recognized those symptoms and decided to do something about it?
5 years. I would say roughly about 5 years. I kept thinking that this is something I can get over. I mean, Michelle, everybody go through this. Everybody have to deal with this type of stuff. Whether you work for company A or you work for company B, it's the same kind of stuff. So just deal with it. Hold up to it. You have a mortgage to pay. You have responsibility at home. Just kind of just suck it up and deal with it. But there's that. I think what was really stood out for me during that period of time was the anger, the amount of anger I have towards people, the colleagues I work with. It's always about someone else did something to me versus, so I'm like lashing out when I don't have a good day. And I remember, what really, really caught my attention recently is that how a lot of people actually came to me and said, Michelle, I could not speak to you years ago. What happened to you?
Wow. Now
Let's talk to me.
Yes, what a huge transformation. And we would sort of talk about, within the context of iPEC and those energy levels, that catabolic energy, which we when you are filled with that, whether it's feeling like the victim, like there's nothing I can do. This is just the way it is, right? I signed up for this. I have bills to pay. This is the lot in life that I've chosen. So it is what it is. I'm just going to, to that anger that you said you were feeling, that frustration around another human, where it's like, come on already. And it sort of puts these blinders up, and we feel very trapped and like we don't have a choice, and that we're not a choice. But what I'm hearing is that all of a sudden you realize that there was this other choice, that it took you in the direction of coach training. So tell me just like a snippet of that journey to coach training as an option to what you were feeling.
Yeah. So after I got burned out, I started to really got curious about what options is out there. And during that time, I remember there's a lot of people around me. They're doing a lot of self-discovery. They're doing self-development, and people are exercising. They're going back to the gym. They're doing a lot of physical activity. And for me, one of the things that really got me out of burnout was I started to put my interest in something else. And that something else was getting physically fit, going to the gym, start working out. If I sweat it out, I don't feel it, right? So there's that active movement that got me out and got me out of burnout a little bit, helped me decompress and de-stress a little bit. So I started to working out more. And I decided to hike Machu Picchu. That was one of my story, to hike Machu Picchu. And I have like 2 crutches. So that became the story to tell moving forward. And when I came back from hiking Machu Picchu, I realized that life has much more bigger purpose than just feeling burnout, feeling sorry, and feeling angry with people. So I decided to look even further, and I started to attend more conference, webinar, seminar, and then I came across iPEC, because what really caught my attention from iPEC is that raising consciousness 1% at a time. That absolutely shot right into my heart, because that the word consciousness was something that was not a term that I would have looked into, being in that space of burnout and being anger and feeling like a victim. Consciousness was something that I started to wanted to know more about when I start to getting more out of my own head, out of my own story, and looking into the possibility of how can I help others to go and do what I have gone through. Yeah.
So I'm like, I want to rewind a little bit, because you bring up this incredible journey that you had, which sounds like the catalyst. It was that sort of the hero's story, the hero's journey. And you shared that you have 2 crutches. So what? I have like 1,000 different questions. You started working out. So let's just go back to that. And I apologize for all the listeners, but you can hear what's going on in my brain, and maybe you're with me on this too. So you found a way to channel your energy outside of work. And you're absolutely right. Certainly over the last 2 years, I've heard a lot of those stories that people took this time to really explore and try new things because we had the opportunity. And for you, that meant going to the gym and finding an outlet for that energy. And it helped get you out of your head and into a better space. And of course, chemically, we know that helps too. What was the trigger for you where you all of a sudden said, I'm going to hike Machu Picchu? Like, how did that happen?
I think it came down to the relationship that I have with others. There were multiple signals of how this is not working out. My life in the past was not working out for me. And they usually show up as signs of how I interact with others. The interaction I have with my colleague, with my family, all these people around me, it really sent off the sense of what am I doing wrong? And I was asking that question, what am I doing wrong? Why is nothing working out for me? And that was like my my signal to really, really think about what is going on? What are you doing wrong? And I think just by asking that question, it's like a awakening moment, right? And we talked about this is the era of the Great Resignation. And so one of my perspective is that instead of looking at it as a Great Resignation, maybe it's a time of the Great Awakening or realignment to what is it that is important to us, and how do we want to use what we have and moving forward.
So for folks that are maybe watching or listening, and this is resonating with them, right? I'm feeling frustration. I'm feeling exhausted. I don't feel connected to what I'm doing. What would you recommend as a starting point for opening up to this idea of an awakening or a reevaluation? What's a good starting spot?
I would say to really understand what is the story that we're living in right now. Right? Up until this point, there's a story that we live in. And you had talked about the hero's journey. And that's a story that we live in. So if we can start recognizing the fact that you are your hero, you are your own hero in your life, then your journey start exactly where you are. And it is a story that you live in that's going to paint the picture of how it's going to end. How is it going to change? How is it going to, what is your next step? So if it's someone who's watching or listening, and someone who's in the audience right now, if this is what you're feeling, then I would encourage you to be curious about what is the story that you're currently living in, and what have you been telling yourself right now.
I'm a big fan of the idea that you share, that and that's always come up for me throughout the years, where we're writing our own stories, and do we want to be the main character, right? Or do we want to be sort of one of those ancillary little characters on the side that's watching what's happening? And so what I'm hearing you share is that a great starting point is to frame yourself in this story. You're the hero. What stage of this journey are you on, and where would you like to go next? And that's something that we do control. We have that choice. And I guess
I'm actually curious about like the audience, if you are writing a book right now for yourself on your life, what would you title it? Like I would be very interested to hear from the audience. Like if you're writing a book about yourself right now, how would you title your book? So if they feel comfortable, feel free to put it in the chat. I would love to hear.
I love that. And I'm so going to be thinking about that later. And the beauty is books, right? Books have lots of chapters, right? And so the chapter that you're living in right now, right, may be called one thing, but there's an opportunity for that next chapter or that sequel to have a very different title. How might someone recognize that they are in burnout versus, just, well, this is how life is? Like, what are some signs that they could just be aware of?
Well, so the signs comes in multiple altitude and aptitude, right? Because there's the emotional signs of, do you find yourself feeling stressed? Are you constantly thinking about, worrying about something? Do you feel, and is there anxiety? So that's more like a physical and emotional and mental aspects of those symptoms. Have you noticed that you're coming down with cold, or do you get sick more often? Chances are you're stressed out from all these things that's going on. So perhaps, that would be a warning sign that you might want to look into in terms of the burnout. There's also other aspects of, the environment that we live in. Are you currently being moving from places to places? Are you being forced to go from places to places? There's also friends, because nowadays we are kind of still social distancing, even though some of the places have been reopened and some places have come back to meeting in person. But the reality is people need to connect with each other. And if that's not there, then that can also create a lot of stress, and that can actually lead to burnout. So I believe burnout is a result, and you're already seeing the sign, whether you're going to doctor's office more often, do you coming down with sickness more often? Are you being socially impacted by what's going on, over the last 2 years? So those are the symptoms, and the burnout is a result of those symptoms.
So I guess in that sense, it's recognizing, right? It's recognizing the symptoms, and understanding the triggers, I guess, and getting curious. I mean, that's the sort of the big thing that I'm hearing is get curious, be gentle with yourself, because I think we all have a tendency to get mad and blame ourselves or blame others. And even just that little twist of, reframe, if you will, to get curious. Why am I feeling this way? What are some of those outer things that might be affecting the way I feel? As you said, being tired, not having that loss of connection, right? And right, as you said, in these last few years, that's been a huge one for so many people. And also, what I'm hearing is that be aware that you do have a choice, that there is a choice in how you think and feel and move forward. What are some other, I guess, if I was in your, I was working with you and going through some of this and recognizing that I was in a state of burnout, and maybe I'm not a gym goer, what would be some, some thoughts that you would share around how I could start to harness, where I'm at and move forward?
So I personally love journaling. I used to write
Mm,
journal all the
mhm,
time. Like I would get angry and I can't, because anger, it would be, kind of dangerous, right? Because you
mhm,
wanted to make sure that you were exercising your anger in a very non-harmful way to others. So one of my
mhm.
favorite way is actually writing an anger journal. Every time.
An anger journal. I love that. Say more.
Anger journal, right? I have so much anger. I have so much stress out of something. I just put it down on my piece of paper, and then I can do whatever I want that piece of on that journal, and it feels safe as long as nobody discovered it.
Yeah. Into the fire it goes afterwards. Yes.
And yeah, we can burn it later, right? We can talk about burning it later. Once you complete that journal
Yeah.
cycle, then
Yeah.
I burn my journal.
Mm,
But journaling is a great way to decompress. It's a great
mhm,
way to really understand. It gets you to start thinking about looking at your own thoughts. And I think this is something
mm.
that we don't do a whole lot. We're
Yeah.
sitting here, we're doing that storytelling to ourselves, and we don't necessarily see what's going on in our mind. But when you start
Mhm.
writing, when you start journaling, you have a physical and visual way of seeing what you lay down on paper. And it's, I still keep my journal. So sometimes when I go back and read my journal, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, is that how I thought in the past? Is that what I was thinking? That's interesting how I was thinking that way.
Right.
And how would I think differently?
Yeah. And how would I think differently? Right. What's a different way to look at this? Right.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I remember when we were initially talking, um, the positive, some gratitude. I
Yeah.
remember you sharing that that was a really important part of your journey as well, just the commitment to um, that mindset of gratitude.
Yeah. Gratitude is so important. It helps us to remind ourselves what is it that we have.
Mhm,
And one of the analogy that I heard over the years is that, sometimes it's hard to visualize what am I grateful for. But when
mhm,
you really imagine yourself, you're like in this bag of Skittles as life, how life is resembling this bag of Skittles. You
mm,
pour open the Skittle and pour it on your hand. You always have rainbows in your hand, right?
mm.
So gratitude teaches us to focus on what we have in our palm, in our hand, rather than focusing on the color that's missing.
Wow. Wow. That is powerful. I love that. And with that, we are actually at, we never have enough time. We are at the half hour. So what I'd like to do is thank you, Michelle, your energy and your stories and your wisdom and your words and storytelling. To remind everyone that to get in touch with Michelle, we've included that information in our chat. To learn more about iPEC, you can always go to our website as well if you'd like to hear more or learn more about what it means to go on this coaching journey. You can reach out to our admissions staff and we would love to chat with you as well. We will be back next month with coaching conversations with our amazing graduates and certainly the energy explorers. And again, just thank you. Gratitude for everyone that joined us today. And look in that palm and see the colors that are there. And what a wonderful message to leave you with. So thank you, Michelle. Thank everybody for joining us. And we'll see you again soon.